The Louvre at midnight held its breath. In the Salle des États, where the world's most famous painting resided behind bulletproof glass, the darkness was not complete. Security lights cast geometric shadows across the parquet floor, their amber glow barely penetrating the vast emptiness. Red laser beams swept the room in predetermined patterns, invisible threads protecting priceless history from curious hands. The marble beneath reflected nothing, cold, indifferent, ancient. Dust motes drifted through a shaft of moonlight that had found its way through the high windows, each particle suspended in time like memories refusing to settle. The air itself seemed preserved, thick with the scent of old wood and linseed oil, of centuries compressed into silence. No footsteps echoed, no breath disturbed the stillness. Only the faint mechanical hum of climate control systems reminded the space that it existed in the present at all. Behind the glass, she waited. La Gioconda, the Mona Lisa. Lisa Gherardini, wife of Francesco del Giocondo, immortalized by Leonardo da Vinci between 1503 and 1509. 5 centuries of contemplation had worn smooth the facts of her existence, leaving only that enigmatic expression, neither smile nor smirk, neither joy nor sadness, but something perpetually suspended between all emotions and none. The moonlight touched the painting differently than the museum lights ever could. It fell across the sfumato technique, those delicate gradations of light and shadow that gave her face its impossible softness. The landscape behind her, those winding paths and distant bridges, the surreal mountains and the dreamlike water, seemed to shift slightly as if breathing. And then, impossibly, she moved. Not the canvas. Her! The painted figure tilted her head with a grace that belonged to a different era entirely, when movements were measured, deliberate, costly in silk and propriety. Her eyes, those famous eyes that had followed millions of visitors across 500 years, blinked. Once, slowly. The subtle curve of her lips remained unchanged, that eternal almost smile fixed in place like muscle memory from another life. Her hand, crossed so delicately over her other arm, lifted from the canvas surface. Fingers flexed, testing reality. The dark green sleeves of her dress rippled with a heaviness that belonged to real fabric, not pigment. She leaned forward, and the landscape behind her remained fixed and flat as she separated from it, stepping into 3 dimensions with the solemnity of a saint descending from stained glass. The bulletproof barrier meant nothing. She passed through it like morning mist through a window screen. Her bare feet, pale, perfectly rendered feet that had never touched ground, met the cold marble of the Louvre floor. The temperature shocked through her, a sensation she had no context for, no memory to soften. She stood perfectly still, processing touch, weight, gravity, cold. The darkness of the museum wrapped around her like water, and she looked down at her hands, turning them slowly in the dim light, watching shadows pool in her palms. She wore the same outfit she had been painted in, the dark dress with its pleated bodice, the sheer veil over her hair, the yellow sleeves. No shoes, no jewelry except the simple gold chain. She looked exactly as Da Vinci had left her, except now she was present tense, breathing air that her lungs had never been designed to need. The security lasers swept toward her, and she watched them with detached curiosity. These red lines that meant nothing to her, that belonged to a world she could not yet comprehend. An alarm should have triggered. Cameras should have recorded this impossibility. But the moment existed outside of systems and sensors, in a pocket of reality that technology had not yet learned to monitor. She walked toward the door, each step careful, measured. Her expression never changed. That smile, the smile that had launched 1,000 theories, remained fixed, serene, inscrutable. Perhaps she was terrified. Perhaps she was exhilarated. Her face offered no answers, only that eternal question mark curved into the corners of her lips. The grand corridors of the Louvre stretched before her like the halls of a palace she'd never visited. Marble columns rose toward painted ceilings, other artwork sleeping in their frames. She passed Egyptian sarcophagi and Greek statues, Renaissance tapestries and Baroque portraits. They did not wait. This transformation belonged to her alone. She found the exit not through navigation but through instinct, following the pull of something she could not name. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps destiny, perhaps simply the inexorable forward motion that separates the living from the painted. The doors opened automatically before her, another technology she could not parse. And then, the world hit her like a symphony played in the wrong key. Paris at night blazed. Neon signs flickered in languages she'd never seen, advertising products that had no names in her vocabulary. The Louvre pyramid glowed before her, that impossible glass structure that would have seemed like sorcery to the woman she'd been painted as. Electric scooters whirred past, riderless, autonomous, gliding across cobblestones with a whisper that felt like a violation of proper transportation. The air smelled wrong, chemically sweet perfume mixing with exhaust fumes. Street food she couldn't identify, something burnt and something floral competing for dominance. And the lights. God, the lights. Blue LED strips outlining buildings, orange street lamps casting sodium glows, the white flash of cameras, red taillights streaking past, green neon signs reflecting in puddles. The city had become a canvas of electricity. Every surface illuminated, no shadow permitted to exist in peace. A couple sat on a bench nearby, both staring at glowing rectangles in their hands, their faces underlit with cold blue light, expressions blank. They did not speak. They did not touch. They simply scrolled, thumbs moving in rhythmic patterns, consuming something she could not see. She took 3 steps onto the pavement before someone noticed. "Oh my God!" The voice came from a young woman in impractical heels and a dress that would have scandalized the Florence she remembered. The woman's hand flew to her mouth, then immediately to the glowing rectangle, a phone. Though Mona Lisa had no word for it yet, and raised it, pointed it directly at her face. The flash was blinding. Is this real? Oh my God, you guys, the Mona Lisa is outside. She's just standing here. More phones rose like flowers turning toward the sun. 5, 10, 20 glowing screens, all pointed at her, all capturing, recording, stealing something she didn't understand she could lose. The crowd materialized instantly, as if they'd been waiting in the wings of reality for their cue. Students in oversized hoodies, tourists in fanny packs, influencers in designer outfits, hair and makeup perfect even at this hour, always ready for content, always performing. "Mona Lisa, over here." "Oh my God, guys, you won't believe this. Is this a publicity stunt? Is she a hologram? Look at the dress. It's exactly like the painting." She stood perfectly still, that slight smile unchanged, and watched them swarm. They did not approach reverently, as visitors to the Louvre did, maintaining the prescribed distance, whispering in her presence. They pressed close, jostling for position, holding their phones at angles, adjusting, readjusting, taking photo after photo after photo. A young man in a streetwear brand she would never recognize pushed to the front, already speaking to his phone. "Yo, what's up, guys? You are not going to believe this. I'm literally outside the Louvre right now. And the actual Mona Lisa just walked out. I'm not kidding. Look at this. Look at this." He flipped the camera toward her, and she saw herself reflected in that small glowing screen. Pixelated, compressed, translated into a language of light and code. She looked like herself, but also nothing like herself, flattened back into 2 dimensions, but somehow less real than the painting had ever been. "Smile," someone shouted. She was already smiling. She had always been smiling. But they wanted something different, something bigger, broader, more performative. The subtlety that had sustained 5 centuries of fascination meant nothing here. They wanted teeth. They wanted enthusiasm. They wanted her to perform happiness rather than embody mystery. More people arrived. The crowd doubled, tripled. Someone produced a professional camera with a lens the size of her forearm. Drones appeared overhead, their rotors buzzing like mechanical insects, circling her with red recording lights blinking. Mona, look this way! Can you say something? Anything? What's your Instagram handle? Who are you wearing? The questions crashed over her in languages she didn't speak, inflections she couldn't parse, but she understood the tone. She recognized hunger when she heard it, even if its object had changed from bread and salvation to validation and virality. A woman in a pristine white outfit muscled through the crowd, phone extended on a stick, her face a mask of makeup so thick it looked like armor. Hi, everyone. Okay, so this is literally the craziest thing ever. I'm standing next to, oh my God, this is going to break the internet. The woman turned, tried to drape an arm around Mona Lisa's shoulders. The touch felt invasive, presumptuous. The physical contact of someone who believed that proximity to fame granted permission for familiarity. Mona Lisa stepped back, and the woman's face flickered with annoyance before reconstructing itself into a smile. The woman turned, tried to drape an arm around Mona Lisa's shoulders. The touch felt invasive, presumptuous. The physical contact of someone who believed that proximity to fame granted permission for familiarity. Mona Lisa stepped back and the woman's face flickered with annoyance before reconstructing itself into a smile. Okay, so she's shy. That's so cute. That's so on brand, actually. On brand. The phrase meant nothing, but the tone meant everything. She was being categorized, packaged, fitted into frameworks she would never understand. Within minutes, though she had no concept of what a minute meant anymore, time having existed for 5 centuries as a single eternal present, the videos were uploaded, transmitted, shared, retweeted, reposted, cross-posted. The footage of her standing outside the Louvre spread through networks of light and fiber optic cables, bouncing between satellites, appearing on screens in Tokyo and Toronto and Sao Paulo simultaneously. Mona Lisa Live began trending globally. She walked down the Rue de Rivoli, and the crowd followed like a tide. Cars honked, traffic stopped. People hung out of taxi windows. The paparazzi multiplied, professional photographers mixing with amateur content creators, all of them shooting, as if they could somehow capture what she was through sheer volume of images. A fashion photographer in all black approached, voice professionally smooth. Darling, the dress, it's exquisite. Tell me, who's the designer? Is this a recreation? Are you collaborating with a fashion house? She looked at him, that same slight smile, and said nothing. She had no words. She'd been painted by a man who spoke Italian, lived in a world where French was the language of her distant king. But she'd never actually spoken in either tongue. She'd been silent for 500 years, and silence remained her only fluency. Playing mysterious, I love it. Very on theme. More phones, more lights, a TikToker choreographed a transition, timing it so that she spun in frame just as Mona Lisa walked past, the video cutting, to show them both in the same shot. The creator's face carefully arranged in an expression of shock, mouth open, eyes wide, performing surprise for an audience of millions. Another influencer approached, this one male, with styled hair and a smile that showed too many teeth. Mona, hey, huge fan. Listen, I have 12 million followers and I would love to do a collab. We could do a whole thing. Renaissance meets modern. The original influencer meets the new generation. It would be massive. She kept walking, that smile unchanged, and his expression curdled slightly before he recovered, turning back to his phone. Okay, so she's giving us the cold shoulder, but honestly, respect. She's maintaining that mystique. That's queen behavior. The Arc de Triomphe rose in the distance, illuminated against the night sky, and she walked toward it without purpose or destination, simply moving because stillness would mean being consumed by the crowd, absorbed into their need for content. The notifications had already begun on millions of devices. Breaking: Mona Lisa spotted in Paris. Is this the most elaborate art stunt ever? Mona Lisa steps into 2025. Here's what she was wearing. The internet is losing it over the Mona Lisa being alive. News vans arrived, satellite dishes extended toward the sky. A reporter thrust a microphone toward her face. Can you tell our viewers what you think of modern Paris? How does it compare to Renaissance Florence? She looked at the microphone, this strange foam-covered object, and did not respond. Could not respond. What was there to say? That this world glittered and blazed and moved too fast for understanding? That she had stepped from oil and canvas into a reality that felt less real than the painting she'd inhabited? A fashion brand's social media manager had already reached out to their creative director. We need to get her in our fall collection. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. Classical beauty meets contemporary fashion. The campaign writes itself. A tech company's CEO tweeted, "Just saw the Mona Lisa trending. Imagine the AR filters we could create. Imagine the metaverse possibilities. The IP potential is infinite." By the time she reached the Tuileries garden, she was no longer herself. She had become content. Raw material for the great digital machine to be processed, filtered, commodified, and redistributed in infinite variations. She saw herself on screens in store windows as she passed. Not the painting, but her. These new versions multiplied and mutated. Mona Lisa with her face brightened and smoothed by beauty filters. Mona Lisa's expression isolated and turned into reaction gifs. Mona Lisa's pose recreated by influencers in matching dresses. Mona Lisa's smile analyzed by artificial intelligence, dissected for hidden emotions, assigned percentages of happiness and sadness, and mystery as if feelings could be quantified and graphed. A cosmetics company had already generated an ad. Her face, but with modern makeup, contoured cheekbones, highlighted nose, smoky eyes, glossed lips. The caption read, "Glow up through the centuries, how we'd style the Mona Lisa today." She saw it on a billboard, and something inside her, something that might have been called a soul if souls could survive the transformation from paint to flesh, fractured. The crowd pressed closer. A fashion stylist produced a leather jacket. "Darling, you'd look incredible in this. Let me just..." They tried to drape it over her shoulders, and she pulled away, stumbling slightly. The shoes that had seemed like a good idea to the person offering them, Balenciaga, limited edition, worth thousands, meant nothing. She was barefoot. Had always been barefoot in the painting, would always be barefoot because some essential part of her identity was bound to that detail. "She's so authentic," someone whispered, and the word felt like violence. Authentic, as if she were a product claiming organic ingredients. As if her existence could be certified and verified and stamped with approval. A podcast host called a colleague, "Drop everything. We need to get her on the show. Imagine the downloads. Imagine the downloads." Mona Lisa, unfiltered. We could ask her everything. Who was she really? What was she thinking? Was she actually pregnant? Was Leonardo in love with her? The theories, the speculation? We could finally get answers. But she had no answers. Only that smile, that eternal ambiguity that had sustained her through half a millennium of projection and interpretation. The sky began to lighten. Not sunrise yet, but the thinning of darkness that suggested dawn's approach. She found herself on a bridge over the Seine. The crowd temporarily dispersed by the logistics of pursuit, giving her perhaps 30 seconds of relative solitude. She looked down at the water, and the reflection that looked back was wrong. Not wrong in shape or form. She still wore the same dress, the same veil, the same expression. But the quality of the reflection had changed. The water's surface rippled with light pollution. with the neon and LED and electric glow of a city that never truly darkened. And in that distorted reflection, she saw not herself, but an image of herself, something flattened and processed and filtered through the lens of a culture that could not allow mystery to exist untranslated. By dawn, she had been turned into 17 separate memes, her face superimposed over modern scenarios. Mona Lisa watching Netflix, Mona Lisa in a drive-thru, Mona Lisa looking at her phone, Mona Lisa's expression captioned with modern anxieties. When you realize it's Monday tomorrow, when your crush texts back, when you remember that embarrassing thing you did in 2019, the subtlety that had survived 5 centuries was erased in 5 hours. She walked through the awakening city, and the crowd had grown into hundreds. Police arrived to manage the chaos. Barriers were erected, a perimeter established. Someone from the French Ministry of Culture was called, panicked, demanding answers. How is she out? How is this possible? Who authorized this? As if she needed authorization to exist. A famous photographer who'd shot covers for Vogue and Vanity Fair appeared, camera ready. Just one shot. Please it. One portrait. I photographed presidents and royalty, but this is history. Let me capture you properly. Let me show the world your true beauty. But what was true beauty anymore? The painting had been beautiful because it refused to resolve, refused to offer easy answers, maintained its mystery across centuries. But this world demanded resolution, required clarity, insisted on understanding, even if understanding meant destroying the thing itself. She found herself somehow in front of a boutique bathroom, one of those impossibly chic Parisian establishments where even the restrooms were designed, curated, Instagrammable. The mirror above the marble sink was not just a mirror. It was smart, embedded with technology she couldn't comprehend. She stood before it and her reflection appeared. But not her reflection. A version of her reflection, processed through layers of augmented reality. The mirror's AI had activated automatically, scanning her face, identifying her features, offering improvements, but not her reflection, a version of her reflection, processed through layers of augmented reality. The mirror's AI had activated automatically, scanning her face, identifying her features, offering improvements, brightened complexion, smooth skin texture, enhanced smile, add contour, suggest makeup looks. Digital overlays appeared on her face in the reflection. Lipstick in 17 shades, eyeshadow in 42 palettes, blush and highlighter and concealer. Each option presented as an enhancement, an upgrade, an improvement on the original. A comparison appeared beside her. You on the left, you but better on the right. The right-hand version had wider eyes, fuller lips, sharper cheekbones, lighter skin. It looked like her, but also nothing like her, the way a pop song cover might sound familiar while missing everything that made the original meaningful. She reached out, touched the glass. The screen responded, cycling through more options. Try these filters. Renaissance goddess. Modern masterpiece. Classical beauty 2.0. Each filter transformed her face slightly, smoothing, enhancing, perfecting, removing the very imperfections that made her human, that made her real. Recommendations scrolled below. Users who loved this look also tried. Italian Renaissance, trending. Mysterious smile challenge, viral. Mona Lisa, inspired makeup tutorials. She stared at these versions of herself, infinite iterations, each claiming to be an improvement, each stripping away another layer of whatever essential quality had made her worth painting in the first place. For 500 years, she had been looked at, studied, analyzed, but always she had remained herself, unchanged, unchanging, that expression fixed in oil and genius. Da Vinci's hand had given her permanence, had preserved her in amber, had protected her from the erosion of time and fashion and changing tastes. But this mirror that offered to fix her, this was different. This suggested she was broken, that her original form was insufficient, that 5 centuries of admiration had been wrong, and only now, with the proper filters and enhancements and digital improvements, could she finally become what she was always meant to be. The bathroom door opened. An influencer entered, saw her, gasped, immediately raised her phone. Oh my God, are you... Wait, let me just... Okay, so I'm literally in the bathroom with the Mona Lisa right now, and Mona Lisa fled. She pushed past the woman, back into the dawn-lit streets, the crowd immediately reforming around her. But something had changed. The smile remained, but behind it, something had broken, or awakened, or both. They walked with her through the city, this parade of witnesses and documenters, content creators and consumers, all of them taking, believing that the act of recording was somehow more important than the thing being recorded. A philosopher would later write an essay. The Mona Lisa emerged into a world that had learned to see everything and observe nothing, to capture everything and understand nothing. She became not a person, but a phenomenon. Not an artwork, but an algorithm. Not a mystery, but a meme. We did to her in one night what we've been doing to ourselves for decades. We turned the ineffable into content. But she couldn't read that essay. She could only feel its truth. Walking through Paris as the sun finally rose, her bare feet aching on the cobblestones, her Renaissance dress strange against her skin, her expression unchanged, but her understanding fundamentally altered. She had been created to be looked at, yes. The painting had always existed for observation, for contemplation, for the gaze of others. But there was a difference, a chasm, really, between being seen and being consumed. Between inspiring thought and generating content. Between holding mystery and being forced to reveal, explain, categorize, brand. The Louvre appeared ahead, the pyramid's glass panels catching the first rays of morning light. The crowd had grown massive now. News helicopters circled overhead. The story had gone global. Mona Lisa comes to life, wanders Paris. Think pieces were being written, theories proposed, conspiracy theories launched, religious interpretations offered. Everyone had an opinion on what it meant, what she represented, what message the universe or God or simulation designers were sending. No one asked what she thought it meant. She stood at the entrance to the Louvre, that same slight smile on her lips, and the crowd pressed close, phones raised like offerings to some digital deity, everyone capturing the moment, everyone wanting to be the one whose footage went viral, whose post got shared, whose account gained followers. Inside the museum, curators had discovered the empty frame, the glass case with nothing behind it, just the Renaissance landscape without its central figure. Alarms had finally triggered, security protocols activated. The building was on lockdown. But the doors opened for her, because even in this modern world, some things recognized what they were meant to protect. She walked through the entrance, past the startled security guards, into the echoing halls that were suddenly hers alone, the crowd held back by regulations and barriers, and the understanding that some spaces remained sacred even in an age that had made everything consumable. She walked to the Salle des Etats, to the empty frame that had held her for so many years. The choice crystallized. She could stay, could learn the language of this new world, could adapt, could become what they wanted her to be, could pose for photographs and appear on talk shows and launch product lines and embrace celebrity, and accept that mystery was a luxury this era could no longer afford. Or she could return. The canvas waited. That landscape of impossible bridges and surreal mountains, Leonardo's imagination frozen in oil and wood. Her space within it remained. A negative space shaped exactly like her absence, ready to receive her back. The crowd pressed against the entrance to the room, held back by security but filming, always filming, capturing this moment for posterity, for proof, for content. she turned to face them one last time. That smile unchanged. That expression that had launched 1,000 interpretations, that had meant everything and nothing, that had held mystery precisely because it refused to resolve into a single meaning. But now, looking at them, at their phones, their hungry eyes, their need to capture and categorize and consume, she understood something she hadn't known 500 years ago when Leonardo had painted her. The smile had never been about happiness or sadness, about secrets or satisfaction. It had been about distance, about maintaining a space between the observer and the observed, a gap that protected her from being fully known, fully possessed, fully consumed. She had been painted during the Renaissance, an age that believed in the power of the individual, in the mystery of the human soul, in the idea that some things should remain ineffable. Da Vinci had understood that, had painted her not to be solved, but to be wondered at, not to be understood, but to be contemplated. This age didn't believe in mystery anymore. It believed in transparency, in revelation, in the obligation to share everything, to make everything accessible, to democratize experience at the cost of depth. She could not live here, could not survive in a world where every moment was captured, every expression analyzed, every detail dissected and debated and turned into content for consumption. She stepped toward the canvas. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that sounded like wind through abandoned buildings. She placed her bare foot against the painted ground, and it accepted her, the two-dimensional surface yielding to three-dimensional form, reality, and representation merging like colors on a palette. One leg disappeared into the painting, then the other. Her dress folded back into brush strokes, her hands returned to their painted position, crossed delicately over her opposite arm. Her veil settled back into pigment. Her face, that face, slipped back into oil and genius and permanence. The smile remained, but now everyone in that room understood what it meant, what it had always meant. I am here, but you cannot reach me. You can look, but you cannot possess. You can interpret, but you cannot solve. I am mystery itself, and mystery is what you've forgotten how to protect. The transformation completed. She was once again paint on poplar panel, once again two-dimensional, once again trapped or preserved or protected in the eternal present of art. The crowd stood in silence for perhaps 3 seconds before the first phone rose, before someone said, "Did you get that? Tell me you got that." Before the moment was processed, packaged, posted. Mona Lisa returns trended for 3 days. The footage was analyzed by experts, declared variously to be a hoax, a miracle, an augmented reality stunt, a mass hallucination, proof of the simulation theory, or an elaborate marketing campaign for an unnamed product. The Louvre increased security, installed more cameras, enhanced the glass case, added sensors that could detect dimensional anomalies. But late at night, when the museum is dark and still, when the red security lasers sweep through empty rooms and dust motes drift in moonlight, the guards sometimes pause before her portrait. And they swear, though they never admit it in daylight, never put it in a report, that the smile has changed, that it's slightly sadder now, or slightly wiser, or slightly more certain, that it's the smile of someone who went looking for something and found exactly what she already knew was true, that some things are more valuable in paint than in flesh. That mystery is more precious than understanding, that the distance between art and life exists for a reason, that the most human thing we can do is allow some things to remain unknown. The painting hangs behind its glass, unchanged and eternal, while outside the museum the world continues to scroll, to capture, to post, to consume, never quite noticing what it's lost in the endless pursuit of connection without depth, of sharing without understanding, of seeing without ever truly looking. And the Mona Lisa smiles her enigmatic smile, as she has for 500 years, as she will for 500 more, protected by the very thing this age has forgotten how to value: the right to remain forever and always, just slightly out of reach.